You know, the funny thing about audio is that the better the speaker is, the easier the review. And on this one, I could be as subjective as I want because truthfully, the measurements speak for themselves. If you follow me on Instagram, you know I'm into watches. So before we get into this Cali audio review, I'd like to tell you about another Cali-based company founded by a young couple. Today's show sponsor, Relio Watches. Relio Solstice with its colored dials caught my attention, but the teal spoke to me. Unlike quartz watches, mechanical watches like these don't have batteries. They run on springs, gears, and human engineering. Wind it, wear it, and it'll stay running. Both of these watches run at 8 beats per second, giving it that smooth sweep. Sapphire crystal is scratch resistant, rating 9 on the Mohs scale, just below a diamond. Underside anti-reflective coatings let you appreciate the fume sunburst dial from all angles. And when the lights go out, Superluminova glows. Solstice has its own character, not trying to be anything else. The screw-down crown makes it water resistant to 100 meters. Showers, no problem. The bracelet is comfortable thanks to tapered lugs, a milled clasp, and 6 micro adjustments. Whether you're going casual or you want to dress it up, this suits the occasion. Twice a year, the sun appears to stand still, until time reveals the truth. It never stopped moving. This is Solstice. I'll link to Relio's website if you want to get one for yourself. Thanks to Relio for sponsoring this video. All right, so this is my third Cali audio speaker that I've reviewed. I first reviewed their Cali Audio LP6, and then I reviewed the IN5s. I was impressed with both of them. The initial review of the LP6, I liked pretty much everything about it, except for it had a little bit more hiss than I would prefer with studio monitors, because with studio monitors, you can't really turn the volume down. The volume's kind of set. I mean, they do have a volume control in the back, but they don't really expect you to go back there and change it. As opposed to with normal speakers, if you're not listening to them, you just kind of turn it down. With studio monitors, they're always up, regardless of whether you're playing music. And so that's less of an issue if you're playing sound out of them because you won't hear that hiss. It's just for me, I have a quiet environment and I could really hear that hiss. And they've resolved that issue. They're now using an amplifier that just has lower self noise. Now at max volume, it's not dead silent. I can still hear something coming out of them, but a lot less annoying at mid volume, especially not something that would bother me. I have them on right now at my desk, not bothering me. Straight up right now, these are $180 each, $360 a pair, and that is a ridiculous price. Just go and get them. If you're looking for studio monitors, these are the ones. I can easily recommend these. As I said earlier, these do have outstanding measured performance, and we'll get into that in a bit. That's important, of course, if you're gonna be using these for sound production, because you wanna make sure that what you're making is accurate. And so if your speakers aren't accurate, well, your mix is not gonna be accurate. So that's the whole point. I've talked to the engineer, Charles Sprinkle, and he's very adamant about making sure that whatever's being produced using his speakers are neutral, that they can get a good mix out of them.
Because keep in mind, our primary customer is using these products as a tool to make decisions with, and they need to be able to make good decisions, and they need to not be distracted.
So subjectively, I would say I listened to these, they sound amazing, as did all the other Cali Audio stuff that I've reviewed. So props to Charles Sprinkle. I've spoken with him before. He really knows what he's doing over there. They're doing a lot of stuff with computer simulation to make sure that there's no port chuffing. That's why the port is shaped this way.
It was designed using computational fluid dynamics. Basically, it's finite element analysis to predict the airflow so that we can optimize the design for low noise.
He's really a measurement guy, and so it's no wonder that these measure extremely well. That's really what you want for sound production. Now, if you're somebody who just wants it for sound reproduction, you're gonna benefit too, because anything that you listen to from these is gonna sound neutral, it's gonna sound accurate, it's gonna sound great. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about these speakers. I do have to say that these were sent to me free for review, but again, a lot of speakers are sent to me free for review, and the previous review that I did were also sent to me free for review, and I didn't have a ton of great things to say about them. So these are 6.5-inch woofer with a 1-inch soft dome tweeter in this waveguide that you see here. Now, this is a larger woofer than the IN5s. The IN5s were 5 1/4, and they got surprisingly low when it comes to bass. they were putting in a lot of work. And so with these, you would expect to get a ton more bass from the 6.5-inch driver. You don't, but that doesn't mean that the bass isn't good. For my measurements, they were able to go down to about 47 hertz, which happens to be exactly what they say on their website. There's some correlation there. I always like it when my measurements match the manufacturers. You'll also notice from the frequency response that is very flat, very smooth, accurate. These are amazing. Of course, they're using a ton of DSP, and I have heard that they were able to use more DSP in this new LP6v2 compared to the original V1. And so you see that here in the measurements. I have the old measurements of the V1. And so things could have changed in my space. Definitely, I'm in a new space here. So my measurements may not be exactly the same, but you can see the trend that generally the V2 is flatter. Everything I see is an improvement. They also changed the woofer design so that it doesn't have a coating on it. Perhaps it improves the efficiency slightly, maybe reduces the cost, maybe a little bit of both. In any case, I didn't see any difference. I don't care that it's not shiny. I'd actually prefer this look over the original shiny look. So that's a good move on their part. The waveguide works extremely well. So horizontally off axis, this is important if you're listening to music and you're planning to move around side to side. Not so important if you're just kind of using it for music playback, but if you're using this to mix and master, you may be over here doing some stuff over here and you want it to sound consistent no matter where you're at. And so these do a good job of making sure that the sound is consistent, and you can see that from the measurements here. So here is a measurement 45 degrees off axis horizontally, and you can see that the response doesn't change a whole lot. What you expect to see is a drop in treble response, and that's kind of normal. For me, I got the best response when I was right mid-range between the tweeter and the woofer, and the worst response was when I was above the tweeter. That's typical, but it wasn't as terrible as some other speakers. You just see the dip in response in the crossover region here. That's totally normal, and that's maybe why they have the IN5, because if you like to put your speakers on the side, I've seen a lot of people do that. These are probably not the best ones for that. The IN5s would probably be better because they do have a concentric design, which means that it doesn't matter if you're above, below, to the side. It kind of gives the same frequency response no matter what. These are good, but not the best if you're to lay them on their side. I don't think the folks over there at Kali would recommend you do that with these. I think they would recommend that you get the IN5. So keep that in mind. If you're going to keep them vertically with a tweeter on top and the woofer on the bottom, doesn't matter. It's going to sound good horizontally off axis. So you're good to go. So I did a measurement all around the speaker, and that gives you an idea of the sound power of the speaker. When you look at that measurement, comparing it to the on-axis listening window response, the sound coming out of the front of the speaker, when it's smooth like this, what that tells you is that the frequency response is very consistent no matter where you are relative to the speaker. That's definitely a good thing. It also means that you can EQ it well if you want to EQ this even more. Now, quickly comparing the frequency response of this to the IN5s that I have, is that I noticed that the IN5s kind of have a more downward tilt to them. Near field, that's questionable whether you want that downward tilt. Size-wise, these should be the same as the LP6. I don't have them anymore, so I can't use them to compare, but I do have the IN5s. What you can tell is that these are wider and shorter, but less deep than the IN5s. I played these at their max volumes and I wasn't able to hear any audible distortion, so they do have limiters to prevent that, and they do their job well. With regards to bass, I played some ridiculous test tracks that have frequencies that these definitely should not and cannot play, but I still wasn't able to hear or detect any port chuffing. That's a good thing.
Sit down.
A lot of times with front ported speakers, you can kind of hear air coming out of the front, or you hear some resonances coming out of the front of the speaker through the port. I didn't hear that with these. If you want to hear the deepest bass notes, the lower octaves, you will want to use a sub with these. These don't have a sub out directly from the speaker because I think that they assume you're going to be using an interface with a subwoofer output. I kind of knocked the previous speakers I reviewed, some inexpensive studio monitors, for not having it, but I also don't think that the person that's going to use those would have an interface with a subwoofer out. These are also not very expensive, so they might not have an interface with all those options. You know, I think it might be cool to have a subwoofer output on these in future iterations. I think that's my only nitpick with regards to these. Let's go ahead and put these on the speaker leaderboard and see where they place. I already know that they're gonna be pretty high up. Let's just see how high. So the LP6v2 fits in a few different categories. Here in powered speakers, this is based on looks, build quality, functionality, sound quality, and value. And so it could be at the top here, except for the fact that some of these have a few more functions as speakers. So I'm going to put them above the IN5s. I like the sound of them better. These have a little bit more functionality, and these are much more expensive at around $2,000 a pair, I think, when I review them. I think the LP6 sounds better than the 5s, but the 5s do have HDMI ARC, they have a remote, they have Bluetooth, and so it has more functionality. And I think the same thing when it comes to best bookshelf. I'm going to go ahead and put these right here, just because they're extremely accurate. I mean, that is the number one thing. So I like these for various reasons. You guys know me, I like a lot of bass. These do have good bass, but not quite as much as some of these other ones. The SyncCell Alpha is amazing. It's much more expensive at $1,700, but it has a lot of bass, but not as accurate. The only reason it would be below some of these other ones is just purely based on functionality. You'll see it'll make a little more sense later on. Initially, I said that they're $180 each, but right now the price went back up to $200. So just check to see if you're getting the best price. I'll leave a link down below. At their current price, these are under $500 a pair. So let's see what is in this category here. Under $500 at the very top, just because they have so much. They have DSP, they're powered, and so they're really a great value. I think these Encores came out to about $360 for a pair of passive speakers. So for a little bit more, you're getting powered speakers, DSP built in. It's really hard to argue against this LP6v2. Oh, I almost forgot to put them in the best for desktop category, and they're definitely going to be at the top of that category, right above the IN5s. Okay, so last but not least, best overall sound regardless of price. So this is just sound quality, but that includes all the frequencies, the full range, and where would they place for full range? I would have to say, I almost want to put it above these ELACs, but I think to be fair, those did have a good amount of bass. I'll put them right here above the IN5s, but you can see where they rank in this whole list. They're very close to the top. So for $400 a pair, these are an amazing deal. So a few other things I didn't mention, just because they are the same on the IN5 and the original LP6, which is that it has quarter-inch balance input, it has XLR balance input, it has these dip switches that allow you to change the frequency response depending on where they're placed in the room. So that's pretty cool. They've taken the time to measure these in those various situations to make sure that these sound good in all those situations. It's never gonna be perfect because they don't know your exact situation, but I would argue that it's better than nothing. How do they get this to these prices? I don't know. How are they making money? I don't know. But if you're interested in these, I'll leave a link down in the description. And if you like the video, make sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell to be notified when I upload new videos. Take care. Bye-bye.